Are you as hot as I am
Oh
right
my
now?
God. Y'all. I don't have AC. We are in the middle of the summer, July.
It's like 100 degrees. I'm wearing jeans.
Yeah, it says it's 86 outside.
But
There's no breeze. Usually we get like a little bit of breeze and like you can open the window. It's all still out there.
It's dead.
Like, come on. So after this, we're going to go eat somewhere with air conditioning.
Welcome to Historia.
Yeah, we're going to try to ignore the fact that we are sweating. But it's fine.
I have a book as a fan.
I'm just going to use my hand.
This actually works really well.
That's good. Maybe I should use my notebook.
Probably. So loud.
Okay. Anyway, we're going to survive. So hi, I'm Kylie.
I'm Jamie.
There's also a candle that's like...
She is obsessed with this candle that's burning right now. She thinks that it's going to burn the house down.
It's a huge flame, guys. It ain't going down.
I don't know why you don't just, like, light the other one.
I don't know. I like to watch chaos ensue.
I like that.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry about the no episode thing last week.
Kylie's a married woman now.
Yeah, I did get married. It's crazy. It's like insane that it's already been a week. It doesn't feel that much different.
It doesn't.
Because we already lived together. Like literally nothing changed except my last name, and that I still haven't gotten it legally changed.
It's gonna take you a hot minute.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was great. It was great. Our wedding was like better than I thought it'd be.
I just have to make this comment that I noticed, James noticed, girl, you were stressed about your parents your whole family being late to everything.
Yeah, that's because they're like, God, my parents are like, so it starts at this time, right? And I'm like, no, because here's why I'm frustrated. I get really angry when like you've received the communication.
Yeah.
And you just don't take the time to look at it.
Yeah.
Like not only did my coordinator put together this like beautiful timeline, like very detailed, I emailed it to them. I sent them over text message, and then my they're still late to the rehearsal. I'm like,
you were like half an hour late.
Yeah, they're like, I thought it started at 1:30. I'm like, what? Or 12:30, whatever. Anyway, yeah, that was stressful. It's just like one of those things, if you've been communicated.
And then the pictures, Erica was telling me everything about that.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, that's another thing, because I wanted to get my family pictures done really quickly.
Yeah,
because I was like, we're not wasting hours on this. And then like our family just kept disappearing. We were like, come on guys, but it's fine, we made it through.
I could see it on your face, and I was like, is she gonna blow? Is she gonna blow? But you held it I wasn't
that
gracefully.
Stressed, I would say. I wasn't like stressed about it. It was I don't like when people like try to make things harder than it has to be.
Honestly.
And like, obviously I wanted the day to go well, and like, you know, I don't need negative comments and all that, but it really wasn't. Like, once we finished pictures, I was fine the rest of the night. Our coordinator said it was the best wedding of the year.
She was really nice.
So yeah, we did a fun first dance, and everyone loved it.
I cried.
Yeah, a lot of people cried. I was like, yes.
What? Okay, I want to know, where is that from?
Moulin Rouge.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we started dancing to Your Song by Elton John, and then I went into Moulin Rouge because the Elephant Love Medley has that song in it. So it was just a fun thing. That was like the first thing we ever planned for the wedding. Yeah. Like right after we got engaged, we planned that. And then we only practiced it once. So I'm glad it went well, but.
Well, you guys are like a natural, like you went to school for theater.
Yeah.
You know what to do.
Yeah. Overall, like, I feel like it went really well.
Oh, yeah. That was a great wedding. Even James, he made the comment. He was like, they look like they actually enjoyed themselves.
Yeah. Because I've been to weddings where they just look so stressed and like...
Well, yeah, because they spend half the time talking to people.
Yeah. And I was trying to do a good mix of like dancing and talking and taking pictures. And I feel like I did good at that. Because I kind of wanted to be everywhere at once. Yeah. I don't have any like regrets. I tried to save money by not getting a DJ. And then... didn't go well, but I mean, So do you know the story?
No.
Okay, so I wasn't going to get a DJ because I'm like, you don't need one nowadays. Just plug in a playlist.
Yeah.
And you'll be good to go. So my venue didn't have a good sound system. So she was like, get a sound system. And I was like, okay, cool. So I got a sound system from Guitar Center and like rented it out. We paid for it and everything. And then they were setting it up. And like, this is why I was stressed when we were getting ready because it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And they were like trying to use my computer, my iPad, my phone, and like nothing was working. And I thought like, cause they stopped coming to me. So I was like, okay, they figured it out. Cool. And then, I found out after our ceremony, Basil was like, man, can you believe what happened? And that way they have to get a DJ now. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know. And so it turned out like we had a backup speaker that we used for the ceremony.
Yeah.
And the microphones worked.
Oh my god.
Okay. Alexa, I wasn't even talking to you, bitch.
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding right now. Please try a little later.
Okay. Anyway, ignore... Oh, actually, I don't want to say her name again. I don't know why. What triggered her?
I have no idea.
But anyway, so my coordinator basically had to hire a DJ 5 minutes before our wedding. And so, like, I tipped her more because she was able to get that put together so fast.
Yeah.
So, word of advice, if you're planning a wedding, get a coordinator. If you're doing, like, even a remotely big wedding. We only had, like, 110 people, but, like, she saved our lives. I don't know what we would have done. We would have had really sad music.
Yeah, she was on top of it.
Yeah. So, anyway, besides, like, the DJ thing happening, I feel like it went well. And it was just a fun time. And now we're going on our honeymoon in 2 days. We're going to Disney.
I'm so jealous. I want to go to Disney.
I'm very excited. I haven't been there in 4 years.
Disneyland?
Mm-hmm. I went there in 2018.
Oh.
So it'll be nice to be back. And we're staying at the Disneyland Hotel. And
That's going to be bougie.
I can't wait to swim in the pool. Oh, glorious. Anyway, how are you doing, Jamie?
I'm doing good. My work had a power outage this week.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you know the lights on Woodman?
Yeah.
They were out.
Oh.
And so I had to work from home the rest of the day. And the lights weren't working there, so like the light was all the way backed up to the Sam's Club. Like,
oh geez.
Yeah, going down to get onto 25.
Dang.
Yeah, so people don't know how to do a four-way stop. So
no.
If you do not know this, if lights go out, it's an automatic you start doing a four-way stop.
Yeah.
People do not know this rule.
They just panic.
They do, and they just keep going because they think because they have the bigger line that they have the right of way. Mm-hmm. That's not how it works. It's a four-way stop. So I literally just gunned it, and I was like, if someone's going to hit me, that's their fucking fault. It was a four-way stop. But luckily, I got home in one piece. But yeah, like 2 lights were out, and I was just like, man, that sucks for people who are trying to get on to 25 right now because that line was packed up. And they didn't get, I guess, the power really going until probably later that night. And then when I came into work the next day, the AC didn't work.
Oh my God. How fun.
So, yeah, it was very hot at the end of yesterday and into this morning.
And now you're going to experience it again.
Yes, but honestly, I hate being cold. So this, like, even though I'm, like, sweating.
Yeah, I agree with that. If there was no heat, if we didn't have heat, that would be a completely different story.
Yeah.
I would not be okay. But, like, I can deal with no AC. We'll survive.
Yeah.
But usually, like, in the wintertime, even if the heat's on, I'm, like, bundled up. I'm like, I'm so cold.
Oh, yeah. I love wearing blankets. Like, even in the summer, I'll wear a blanket.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fall's coming up.
I'm so excited.
I'm gonna start decorating for Halloween soon. No one can stop me.
I know, for me, I'm just starting to gather everything for my wedding now.
Yeah. Woo!
I finally organized my table. Oh my God.
Fun.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So, but I chose the type of color that I want for Erica's dress. I told her, I was like, I don't care, like, the style, but, like, if you could do it in the velvet.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be so awesome. She's
the velvet
like,
dresses are awesome.
Yeah, she's like, I don't fucking care. She's like, just tell me what you want. And I'm like, I want to give you freedom at least. I just like this color because like finding a burnt orange dress is so hard to find.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're all like kind of like bright orange and I'm like, I hate bright orange.
Yeah.
I like that dark rust kind of burnt orange. So, preference.
Yeah, the velvet looks good in like the fall winter weddings.
Exactly.
I'm excited. Yay! Jamie was basically my other maid of honor, so thanks for everything you did.
Oh, girl.
She got all the coffee and the snacks. I was like,
I'm here to help you out. You're my BFF.
Round of applause.
You're my biffle.
Biffle. Oh, man. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Mm-hmm. So now I'm just moving on with life. And
I feel that.
In about a week, I won't have a full-time job, so. Anyway, okay, well, you ready to talk?
I don't know. Kylie says something about Japan this week again, but I don't know what it is.
So remember last time I mentioned, I want to also talk about theirs.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was?
No. That was like 3 weeks ago.
It was a while ago. Okay, so I'm not talking about Japan really, like, I'll just tell you. So I'm doing Buddhism today. Because,
okay.
Yeah. I was very, like, I took a religions class in college and loved it. Mm-hmm. Like, I love learning about different religions. And for some reason, Buddhism just, like, sticks out to me. Like, it's just so fascinating. And then I was also curious about the Shintoism.
Yeah.
And how, like, that's the number one religion in Japan. So I also researched that a little bit.
Is Buddhism, is that the one that they believe in reincarnation?
Yeah.
I honestly, I dig that.
I do too. I love it. And like, we're going to talk about it, but like, I just love their intention.
Yeah.
For what they believe in. And, it's just, I don't know. I always encourage people to learn about other religions. Like, even if you have a set religion, there's nothing wrong with learning about a new one. And so do it. So
100%.
That's kind of why I wanted to cover, like, I think it might be interesting to cover different religions. Like, that could be another big series we do. Mm-hmm. Because, like, we just stay in this bubble, I feel like, especially in America, where it's like we're only concerned about, like, Catholicism and Christianity. But, like, there's so much more.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We're doing the history of the Buddha. I'll be talking about the Buddha a lot. And then I'll be talking about Buddhism and kind of the basics of it. There's so much that goes into it, obviously. So I'm kind of scratching the surface. Mm-hmm. And I encourage you all to learn more because I want to learn more. I'm about to watch, there's a 2-hour documentary on YouTube. I'm about to watch that. So. All right. You ready?
I am ready.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was like, does religion count as history? But then I was like, yeah, because there's a whole story that goes into it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot that comes out of it too.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Okay, so as mentioned, when we talked about feudal Japan, we mentioned that there are 2 big religions. Shintoism was number 1 and Buddhism's number 2. Now listen to this statistic. It's not going to make any sense. 70.4% of the Japanese people believe in Shintoism, and 69.8% believe in Buddhism.
Okay, so some believe in both.
Sort of. So yeah, obviously, if you're even remotely good at math, that's more than 100%, right? A lot of people believe that if you're born into Shintoism, you can die a Buddhist, but you still are Shinto. It's very confusing. They don't always get along with each other. And Shintos are like, we're not even a religion. So we'll get into that.
It's more like a spirituality.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about that at the end. I'm going to start by talking about the Buddha and kind of what goes into that. Then I'll cover Buddhism and then I'll cover Shintoism and kind of what it's like to have them coexist. So, yeah. Okay. So Buddhism arose in ancient India. It spread from the northeastern region of India all the way to the central, east, and southwest regions of Asia. Eventually, it influenced most of Asia, and it still does today. And just like every religion, there's many different forms of Buddhism. So it all derives from the same big idea, but then you have like specific types of Buddhism. And so if you know anything about Buddha, you probably see that big picture of him kind of like meditating. And you see those giant statues. That is usually Gautama Buddha. And this is like the founder of Buddhism. It doesn't mean that he's the only Buddha ever. It doesn't mean he was the first one. It just means he is the most well-known. So there were some before him and some after him,
Okay.
which I didn't know that, but
That makes sense.
sorry. I like forgot to breathe. So then I was like, why am I out of breath? Okay. So I'm going to talk about Gautama Buddha. He was born in a small Shakya republic, which is now in modern day Nepal. And so this is kind of the area where Buddhism actually started. He is also known as the I'm gonna butcher this. I tried really hard. Shakyamuni, which means the sage of the Shakya clan. So it just means he's from the Shakya clan, basically.
Okay.
Many people believed, they don't know for sure, but they believe that he lived between somewhere in the mid 6th and 4th century. So they don't know when.
I mean, it's really hard to tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even carbon dating is really hard.
Right. So that's just their best guess. Gautama was born as an elite. So he was basically born already as a prince and already had this wealth to him. And so he didn't really have to like live a stressful life because he had kind of everything handed to him. And he was named Buddha, which just refers to an enlightened being. So it just means the awakened one. So anyone who is a Buddha, like I mentioned, there's more than one. It's somebody who has achieved freedom from suffering and has awakened from a sleep of ignorance. So they've realized that they can live a life without suffering, basically. And it takes a very long time to get to that point. But it just means that they have awakened from ignorance. So some Buddhists think that there can only be one Buddha for each period of time. They're like, okay, so every 100 or so years, there's a new Buddha that lives. Others believe that all beings will become Buddhas because they possess the Buddha nature. So because of the reincarnation, eventually, it might take them a few lives, but eventually everybody can get to the Buddha point.
Oh.
So there's definitely a wide variety of beliefs there. And I think the more common one is that there can be multiple Buddhas. But there are the traditional that believe in just one. So,
Okay.
yeah. So Gautama Buddha is also known as Bhagavat, which just means Lord. Some believe that he lived from 563 to 483 BCE. Others think he lived an entire century later. So like we said, we don't know for sure, which is okay. But there's not a lot of information on his life. They have a lot of Buddhist texts. They actually have more than the Bible does. So they have a lot, but a lot of it was written after him. So they don't have a lot on him, if that makes sense.
I mean, so is every book.
Basically. So we don't know a ton about him, but it was written from the beginning of the Common Era all the way to centuries after his death. And Buddha was born into a warrior caste, basically. His mom's name was Mana Maya, and she dreamt one night of an elephant being in her womb, which just sounds uncomfortable. And then 10 lunar months later, she gave birth to her son from her right arm.
10 months?
Yeah.
Ugh.
From her arm.
I mean, that's just as weird as like Zeus.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of like kind of folktale in it, but yeah. And so he was born from an arm. And because he was born in wealth already as a prince, he lived a pretty luxurious early life. His dad believed in protecting him from like all suffering. So he didn't even want his son to know about like sickness, death, any of that. And so he lived the first half of his life without knowing any of that existed.
dang.
Which is just crazy. And even like sickness, like he didn't even tell anyone. He didn't tell him that anyone would get sick. So I'm like, what happens if you get a little cold? It's like, you're not sick. That's not sick. What? You are fine.
You're just acting weird today.
Yeah, exactly. When he was 16 years old, he married a princess. Her name was Yashodhara. They eventually had a son together.
Ooh.
Good time. So there's not a lot on his life leading up to that. But when he was 29, that's when his life changed. He ended up actually witnessing the suffering that goes on in the world. So he was on a chariot ride outside of the palace one day, and when he witnessed a lot of suffering in the world, he actually ended up seeing 4 different things. The first one was an old man. And so he was like, whoa, what is this guy? Why is he so old? And then the old man taught him that everybody gets old sometime and will die. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what? And so that was the first time he learned about old age. And then he met another man who had sickness. And so he went up to him and asked him. And he said, yes, everyone is bound to get sick at least once or twice in their life. And so that's when he learned about sickness. And then he went up to a dead man. And then somebody explained to him that everybody dies eventually. This was big for him to get. He's like, what? And then the 4th person was meditating. And so he went up to this person and asked kind of, what are you doing? And the guy who was meditating explained that he was actually getting away from being old, being sick, and dying. So meditating was kind of his way of escaping those 3 different things.
Yeah.
And so this really changed his life and his mindset, because then meeting this person meditating kind of taught him like, man, there's a lot that goes on in the world. Like I should be aware of this stuff. So he decided to let go of everything that he had. He got rid of his wealth. He got rid of his family. And he decided to live a life of an ascetic. So basically just like getting rid of everything that means something to you, to kind of like sacrifice everything in your life. And so he practiced strict self-denial as a measure of personal and spiritual discipline. So that means like he would stop eating. Yeah, a lot of things. He wouldn't sleep a lot of times. And like anything where it's like satisfaction, it's gone. So,
wow.
Yeah. And so he believed that that was a way to avoid suffering, was to just kind of not endure anything. Obviously that doesn't end up well, but there were a lot of people who followed this lifestyle. And so he did this for 6 years. He would go around and actually learn how to meditate. And there's so much on meditation that I was researching, and like, I kind of want to do a whole thing on meditation because there's like so much to it. Mm-hmm. We think of it just as like, but it's like, there's so many different kinds of meditation and many reasons why people meditate. So I didn't get like super deep into that, but it does have a lot to do with Buddhism. Yeah. So, but he met a lot of different teachers. He was practicing meditation with them. And he really was taking this life of extreme self-mortification, where he would actually inflict pain on himself without even trying, or discomfort. But yeah, basically just denying himself of any pleasures in life. Does not sound fun. But one day he was bathing in a river and he just realized how weak he was. Like he just wasn't capable of doing anything. Mm-hmm. He fainted from weakness. His body was like super skinny, like completely underweight because he wasn't eating. And he decided maybe mortification is not a good idea.
No, because it will kill you,
yeah, it almost killed him just now. So but I'm like, how do you do that for 6 years? That's insane. And again, he got rid of everything, like his wife, his son, because he believed that was a pleasure.
Oh.
And so after this, he decided, all right, I need to try something new because this ain't working for me. And so he decides, okay, I've learned how to meditate. So let's use meditation for a different reason. Let's see if I can receive enlightenment and kind of see if I can become strong again. So he decided to sit under a tree to meditate. And he did receive enlightenment. All of a sudden, it came to him in like a spiritual sense. He understood the 4 noble truths, which I will talk about later. Mm-hmm. But this really started his awakening process. And he realized, oh, wow, now I totally understand what it means to live life. And so he ended up spending the rest of his life helping people endure suffering. So I'm going to talk a lot about those details as we go. One big thing that struck him this day was the wheel of life. And this is basically your normal wheel, right? When you spin it, it goes around and around. They believe in rebirth. So if it goes around and around, it's going to start over every single time. and that every single person is somewhere in a cycle. And so you have like your birth, and then it goes all the way around to your death. And so every single person is somewhere spiritually, whether it's like you're still suffering, you're wanting to become the Buddha, right? So everyone's on a different path. And then when you spin the wheel, whatever it lands on is kind of your next life.
Okay.
So you could be born in the king realm or in the animal realm. So it's all like different castes on there as well. And that's kind of what they believe is how their next life gets determined. But you can work towards a better life. And then that wheel will instantly go to something better, basically. So as we mentioned, everyone is reincarnated, and that's even the gods. So they believe the gods will come back and continue to come back.
So even gods die?
Mm-hmm.
Legit.
Everyone dies. Yep. And so nobody created this cycle. No one ever was like, you know what? This makes sense. It just was. That's what they say. It was just created. So they don't believe in like the one God, obviously. And so things just kind of happened. And that's their belief there. So early Buddhists thought of this cycle as painful because they're thinking of you're born and then you suffer and then you die and then you start all over again. Which, okay, life sucks sometimes.
Wow. They need to just go write in their diaries.
Right. So yeah, born, suffer, die, repeat. That should be a t-shirt. And so a lot of them are like, dude, there's got to be a better way. This cycle is terrible. Eventually they got over that, and then they were able to kind of see it in a more positive light. Like the fact that you don't have to suffer, and you can kind of find different ways around it. And that's really what Buddhism is. And so, thank you. I feel the air. Feels good. She's using her book. I feel it from here. Samsara is basically the suffering cycle. So that's the name of the wheel.
Okay.
Yeah. So Buddha has learned to overcome the samsara, basically. So if you take the wheel, if you're the Buddha, every time you're born, you're going to be a Buddha. So you've already passed, basically. You're not on the wheel anymore. So there you go. It teaches others to escape samsara. And so a lot of people want to become the Buddha. So they live their life in order to become enlightened, and kind of following that. And that's why the Buddha provides teachings so that people can get there. Because they know that the Buddha is the only one that is awakened. If you're not the Buddha, you're not awakened, you're suffering. And so they don't know when this started. They think time has been going on infinitely, which makes sense. It has. And so every once in a while, they believe that a Buddha is awakened, and it teaches everyone everything. So you have a Buddha, he's going around, he's teaching everyone, but then he dies, and then you don't get another Buddha for a long time. So then, because usually if they die a Buddha, they're not going to be born for a while. And so then they forget, and then another Buddha's born, and then they teach them all. So this way, there's not a ton of Buddhas, if that makes sense.
How do they determine who is one?
So it's just whenever you feel like you're enlightened. There's no like test. But I feel like I don't know if you can fake it. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think you could just be like, I'm a Buddha. And then everyone would be like, yes, you are.
I think how you present yourself will
Yeah.
really show, like,
Right.
how much you do know, or like how much you're awakened.
Right. And I'm sure there are a lot of people, like just how there's a lot of people that believe they're God. I'm sure there's a lot of people who believe that they're a Buddha, even today still.
You get all those types of people.
Yeah. And that kind of goes with the realm, I think, of like, some people believe that there's a lot of Buddhas and others believe in this, only one once in a while.
Yeah.
So those who believe there's a bunch would probably be more likely to believe it. But I feel like you'd be more shunned if you tried that in these more traditional cultures.
Yeah.
So that's like the India area and all that. Okay, so cool. And the thing about Buddhism is that nothing's new. Everything is the same. And so you have to rediscover the same things. So it's never going to change, basically. Jataka is the name of the birth stories in the Buddhist religion. And these birth stories, there's a ton of them. They talk about Buddhas telling others that they will one day be a Buddha. There's actually this story. I didn't write their names down, but it was really interesting. So there was a Lord or a Buddha who was walking outside one day. And then this citizen saw that the Buddha was walking near and there was mud on the ground. Mm-hmm. And so he had long hair and he went on the ground and used his hair to cover the mud so that the Buddha could walk over. And so then after this, the Buddha went up to him and said, "You will one day become a Buddha." And then, so the guy continued to work at it and he did become a Buddha, hundreds years later.
Oh, so after he was reincarnated,
yeah.
His next life was yes, I'm it.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can work at it. If you really focus on those good things on the meditation, you can become one. Mm-hmm. And so anyone can become one. But I think there's just so many stories of a Buddha telling another person you're going to become a Buddha. And then that kind of encourages them to try. So that's just one of the stories. There's a bunch of them. And then we have Oh man, I practiced this word earlier. I said it 3 times. Bodhisattva. Nope. Bodhisattva. And that's basically someone going toward awakening. And so this is what you call somebody who's training as a Buddha. And if you're training as a Buddha, you usually consider this to be your last human body. Because Buddhas are human, but they're supernatural. They have supernatural powers, basically.
Oh.
Because they can connect in spirituality in different ways. And so they believe that if you're training to be one, this could be your last human body, so you better make it a good one. So, yeah. And then we have the Pali Canon, which is the text written in Buddha's life. He didn't give a lot of detail, like I mentioned, but they still follow this today. And there's a lot of late stories, which are the ones that I kind of mentioned, of him being born a prince. So they didn't discover that till way later. Him or his mom carrying an elephant. That was another late story that was put out, claiming he was king immediately, all of that. So everything I mentioned earlier, that was kind of from late records and not so much the beginning records that they found.
Yeah.
So it's kind of stories being passed down generations.
All word of mouth. It starts to get wild.
Exactly. So Gautama Buddha ended up dying at the age of 80. And like I mentioned, the Buddhas were known to have kind of it's not supernatural. They kind of described it as that, but they're still human, but they're not a god, but they're a human with powers, kind of like a superhero. And so they believe that each Buddha has many lives to practice compassion, generosity, those types of different things, and to become even stronger each time. So that's the Buddha. Now I'm going to talk about Buddhism and kind of talk about those details of kind of what the 4 truths are and all of that. So over 500 million people practice Buddhism today.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And a lot of people are it's not a religion, it's a philosophy, or it's a way of life. So a lot of people don't want to call it a religion, because I think it's because religion has such a nasty taste nowadays.
Yeah.
It's hard if you're a religious person. You don't always want to say you're religious because that gives you a weird title, that stereotype, and so I feel that happens with a lot of people nowadays. They're I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Unless they're super devoted.
Yes, exactly. If they call themselves religious, they're probably on the crazy side. And so so a lot of them don't even call it a religion. They're it's a way of life. It's how we live our life. But I was reading this article, and it was talking about how it was well, it is a religion if we're going by actual definition. So it is. Religion can be defined in many different ways. And there's a Prothero model of religion, which is 4 things. So this kind of makes it determined to be a religion. Mm-hmm. 1, there has to be a problem. So we know there's a problem in Buddhism. Everyone's suffering. 2, there has to be a solution. So we have, the Buddha coming in and finding enlightenment. Mm-hmm. 3, there has to be techniques to solve it. And then 4, there has to be someone who did solve it. So those 4 things basically determine that it is a religion.
Okay.
So, Remy? The dogs are so distracting. Is Lila still in here? Oh, okay. She's just chilling. Okay, so somebody who is Buddhist is someone who has gone to the 3 jewels to help with suffering. So in order to be a Buddhist, you have to have these 3 beliefs, basically. Number 1, you believe in Buddha. Number 2, you believe in Dharma, which is the teaching about Buddha. And number 3 is Sagna, which is everyone finding a path out of suffering. So once you find those 3 jewels and you fully believe in them, then you're Buddhist. And so we already talked about Buddha. He brings the idea of stress and suffering to light and tries to find ways around it. So I'm going to jump into talking about Dharma, which goes into the 4 Noble Truths we were talking about earlier. And so these were what Gautama Buddha ended up discovering that day when he was under the tree. And so first noble truth is that suffering is a way of life. Physically and mentally, you're going to suffer no matter what. And this goes with like kind of a lot of other religions believe in sin, you know, and like how everyone has a free choice to sin. It's kind of the same thing where everyone's going to suffer, everyone's going to fall short. And it's an endless cycle of, as humans, we crave things and then we're let down or then it ends up badly. And so suffering can happen when we're not worried about ourselves or the needs of others. And so that's kind of the basic belief. Suffering's going to happen no matter what. Second noble truth is that suffering has an origin. So it's going to come from something. You can't just suffer out of nowhere. Usually it comes from craving, like I mentioned, when you really want something and so you get it, or karma. And karma is huge in Buddhism. I think you all know what it means, but karma is basically the action that you deserve. So if you do bad things will come to you. If you do good things will come to you. And there are 3 poisons in life that make us have bad karma. There's hatred, greed, and delusion. All of those just give us bad karma. And so our goal as humans is to avoid those 3 poisons. So that's the second noble truth. The third noble truth is that suffering can be ended. So humans can actually end their bad actions. Instead of thinking about hatred and greed and delusion, they should replace those 3 poisons with things like kindness, compassion, giving. And so they believe that if you're focused on those things, that you won't suffer. And then the 4th one is the path from suffering. So it's like they believe it to be an 8-fold path that goes with training, moral discipline, concentration, wisdom. So you have to go through the entire path in order to receive enlightenment, basically. And this is how to fix the life's issue. So basically, to sum it up, the 4 truths: life sucks is the first one. The second one is it sucks for a reason. Third one is it doesn't have to suck all the time. And the 4th one is here's how to get out of it, basically. So all things change all the time. And so, like, obviously, you know, just us sitting here, we're changing. You're constantly growing as a person. And so they believe that things are constantly changing. And so everything has to be connected. So if you think of like a tree depends on the sun, but an acorn depends on a tree. So everything kind of depends on each other. So a big belief in this, and this goes for a lot of like spirituality, is like we're all connected, we're all one, because of how quickly things are affected.
It's the circle.
I was going to say that too. It's the circle of life, everyone. The candle's still just going at it. Okay. And so, okay. So the idea of everything kind of changing and how you constantly have to work on yourself because you're not going to stay the same no matter what. This is from a sacred text to allow compassion to come easier. So if you're focused on what I do is going to affect other people as well, then you already have that compassion. You don't have to think about it as much. So it's kind of deep. It's a deep thought. But that's kind of where that comes from. This gets very deep sometimes. Where'd it go? Oh, so like I mentioned earlier, there are way more Buddhist texts than the Bible. For example, the Pali Canon has 57 volumes.
Dang.
Alone. So there's a lot that goes into it. So like I'm telling you guys these different truths and like the big things, but there's so much more. And so you could honestly study this forever if you wanted to. This could be like a full-time job.
I mean, there's historians out there.
Exactly. So just know there's a lot to it. But we have the Sangha, which is the third jewel we were talking about. And this is basically just the Buddhist community. So Buddha obviously gained followers as he went around and talked. And he believes that there's not one thing that fits all people, but everybody's on a gradual path. And so everybody follows the same path, and they might be in different places, but they're all going to follow the same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you all must do this, you all must do this, but it's more like wherever you are, just continue to grow. So everybody starts with suffering, and they end with awakening. And then there's a lot in between as well. And this could take many lives. It could take like 5 different tries to get there. But each time you die and you're born again, you start at that place where you were when you died.
Oh.
Yeah. And so if you ended up living a really good life, then you might even jump ahead. Or if you end up living a bad life, you might go backwards. So it really depends on your actions in your life. But if you lived like a decent enough life, you'll probably start wherever you finished last time.
Okay.
It's a whole thing.
Sounds like it.
But they believe that people should focus on wherever they are on the path, and not so much on like dying, basically. Yeah. Just focus on living life and trying to get to enlightenment.
Well, that's what so many people just stress about.
Yeah.
And it's just like, don't let that consume you, because then that's going to become everything you think about, because people obsess over dying. It's just like, literally just live.
Yeah. I think that's one of my favorite things about like the Japanese culture is like, and a lot of the Asian cultures, but you know, kind of talking about Japan and how like when they went and fought, they didn't think about dying. They were just trying to be noble men. Like, so like they don't focus on it as much as other cultures do.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. So most Buddhists actually end up focusing on maintaining good merit and karma. That's kind of their biggest focus in life. So they try to be generous to everyone. They try to make donations and offerings. They take different vows. They kind of just do anything that gives them more on like the good things, so that they'll get good things coming to them. Most Buddhists, when they are older, kind of give up on reading the sacred texts and meditating. Like once they get to a certain point, they're just like, nah, doesn't matter. And so once you get old enough, you're just kind of like, I've lived a good life. I've done good. And then you can kind of relax a bit more. But usually that's kind of their big focus, is just like, once you get old enough, instead of reading the text, instead of meditating, you're just really focused on being a good person. So that you can move on to your next life in a good way. Okay. So we also have, monks and nuns. If you've seen like pictures of them, they always have the shaven heads, they wear the robes, and they're known to give up everything, kind of like what we talked about earlier with the Buddha, living that ascetic life where they just give up everything that gives them pleasure. So we know like they're not allowed to get married in this culture, in this religion. And so if you're a monk or a nun, you're there to memorize scriptures, you're there to meditate. And meditation is actually a pretty advanced technique. It's not something you can just sit down and do. We have different forms of meditation. So like, you know, people meditate all the time now. They use like the app or whatever. I can't meditate for the life of me because ADHD, but a lot of people enjoy it. And it's not like, for them, it's not just like sit there and think, like or clear your brain, whatever. To them, it's like really connecting with their inner self. And so it's not something that comes easy. But monks and nuns, once they get there, they can meditate without a problem. So they're usually like kind of the messengers. But they can't live a normal life. They can't like eat whatever they want. They can't do whatever they want. They can't have families. So it's kind of like they're heavy on the spiritualism, but like not really living a life. Buddhism, like I mentioned, there's a lot of different types. It just depends on the culture. I'm only going to talk about a few of them. So we have the Theravada, which is practiced in Southeast Asia, more so in like the Thailand area. This is where they are. And they like to keep things as close to the early practices as possible. So they believe in the human figure Buddha. They believe there's only one. or like every 100 years. And so they're kind of the more classic. Then you have the beliefs in China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. They're all very similar. They have the Mahayana Buddhism, which just means the great vehicle. And this started in Common Era. So this is more of like the newer way of looking at it.
Okay.
It introduced new Buddhist scriptures and ideas. And out of this developed Zen and Pure Land Buddhism, which is what people usually have in America. If they're Buddhists here, they usually have those two types. So Zen is when you see kind of that, what's it called? The thing with the black and the white.
I know what you're talking about. Oh, the yin and yang?
Yeah. So you'll
Okay.
see a lot of them kind of use that as their main belief, because, you know, they believe in like the good and the bad. That's more Zen. And then the Pure Land is like following the old scriptures and practicing Buddhism, but just having new beliefs with it as well. And then in the Tibetan, is that how you say if it's Tibet? Okay. Tibetan Buddhism is in Tibet, Mongolia, Nepal, India. And this is kind of a part of the Mahayana. So it's the same type of practice as what you do in like Japan, China, all of that. But it's influenced more by the Tantras, which is basically scripture that is more complex. And they more believe in like the philosophical texts rather than like the spiritual texts, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's Buddhism, the basics. And now I'm going to talk about Shintoism. And it's confusing. Like, I'm still like, what? But it's really interesting, Shintoism, because I didn't know anything about it. I thought it was just a part of Buddhism, but it's not. So Shinto means way of the kami. And the kami gets confusing. They don't believe in a god. They don't believe in, like, a higher being, like Buddha. They believe that a kami can be anything spiritual. So it could be a god. It could be the ocean. It could be anything that kind of connects spiritually to you. There's over 8 million kami. And so it could be something evil. It could be something good. But they just believe that you're going to connect to different kamis as you go through life. And so Shintoism is more so about practicing the rituals, but not so much a religion. They don't follow like a sacred text, anything like that. It's more so like we're going to go and worship and meditate and try to connect to the kami, but we're not going to like look at the ancient texts, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, like I was reading about the kami and I was just like, it can be like a rock or it could be like a giant god. Like, it's just like anything that connects to them. There's, over 8 million kami, and usually they're down to earth. So they actually like come to you. Kami aren't necessarily good. They're not necessarily evil. They believe that some are kind of like what we think of as angels that kind of come down, or they can also be evil. So they can come down and give you a consequence if you did something bad. And this stems from the Yayoi. I think that's how you say it. Yayoi period, which is 400 BCE to 300 CE. The Shinto appeared when Buddhism spread to Japan. So as soon as Japan received Buddhism, because Shinto is really big in Japan, they instantly came over. Each clan had kind of its own rituals and its own version of kami. So some believed kami was this, some believed kami was that. So it really just depended on the clan that they were a part of. Everyone has their own shrines. So like whatever clan you're in, that's your shrine. So it's not an organized religion because you're just kind of like, you stick with a few people. That's what you guys believe. That's what they believe. That's what they believe. Rather than like everyone must follow the same thing. And everyone connects to the kami differently. In the 1800s, we developed two different forms of Shinto. So this was created, I didn't write his name down, but there was a new emperor of Japan who kind of just fucked everything up. And so the Shinto became more of like a state practice. And it was more like state owned and sponsored rather than like a spiritual belief.
So it's like, oh, follow the sea.
Yeah.
Or follow this hill.
It was kind of like a law.
Yeah.
Which is weird. But so you had the state Shinto, which was like the laws, or you had the sect Shinto, which were the people who believed in traditions and private practices, which is like what Shintoism was before the state kind of took over. And then eventually it became a religion. So it is known to be a religion, but a lot of people who practice Shintoism don't consider it to be a religion. And because it became a religion, it was separated from the state. So they actually know how to do that in Japan, so that's good for them. And so instead of it being like more of a state thing to follow, it was more of a religion if you want to follow it. Like I said, it's more about what you practice than what you believe. It's more about like your rituals rather than like, what do you believe in after death, that kind of thing. So there's a bunch of different shrines in Japan. I would love to go there and kind of see all those different shrines, but there's one big thing that you can tell the difference between a Shinto shrine and a Buddhism shrine, and it's called the Torii Gate. So it's like if you've ever seen like the arch and then it has like the two lines above it.
Yeah.
I'm going to post a picture on the Instagram of it. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. It's kind of hard to describe. But that's called the Torii Gate. And this will show that they're Shinto, not Buddhism. So you're allowed to come in no matter what. You don't have to be like a Shinto because, again, they don't think of it as a religion. They invite everyone to come. And they believe that the kami dwells in each shrine. So you can connect with different kamis. It just depends on whoever's there. The Shinto priests do daily rituals for kami. So there are priests, but it's not as strict as Buddhism. Like the monks, like I mentioned, they can't live a life. They can't get married. The Shinto priests can because they're not like an organized religion. So they're able to kind of like do whatever they need to do. This is just a practice for them. Oh. It's kind of like a hobby, but like important hobby. And so they believe anyone can train to be a Shinto priest. You don't have to go through a bunch of lives to get there. You can just become a priest if you want. And they're able to marry, they're able to have kids. So this is kind of the ritual for Shinto. First, and even if you're a visitor, you actually can come. No matter where you're from, you can go visit them still today. And they just ask you to be respectful by doing these different things.
100%.
Oh, I would love to do it. So first thing you do is you bow down at the Torii Gate. So as soon as you enter the gate, bow down. This just shows respect for the kamis. And then you visit the washing station, kind of wash off a little bit. There's like running water. Like a little scooper to like pour water on yourself. And then when you feel like you're clean enough, you can go in and greet the kami. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I wrote down a few. One of them is, this is the most common, you ring a bell and that connects you to the kamis. You can throw a coin into like a fountain. You can bow or you can clap twice. It's kind of like, it's really bad, but like Alexa, you know, when we like call her name. I tried to say it so quietly. She still heard me. But it's kind of like, that's what I imagine. It's like, kami. And they're like, how can I help you? But obviously it's not like that at all. So there's many different ways to connect to them. And once you feel like you've been able to make your connection, everything's been good, you then bow down to say goodbye. And so a lot of people do this. A lot of tourists do this. They kind of explain the process and like, obviously if you're not respectful, you're kicked out. I don't know if there's like a big consequence, but it's just like, don't be an asshole. And I don't know if anyone would go there and do that, but
YouTubers.
Probably. Yeah. They're like, let's go mess up with all the shrines in Japan. And then they have like $5 million from a video. So, Jesus. But many citizens of Japan do go to the shrines and do rituals, but they actually don't consider themselves to be religious at all. So a lot of the statistics that we looked at earlier, those who say they are Shinto don't consider them to be religious. So they might be Buddhist and Shinto, but the reason why that population is so big, because it's just like them thinking they're spiritual and not religious.
Okay.
So some say Shintoism has been around in Japan since the start of time. So they believe that, some people believe that Shintoism actually was before Buddhism. And so it's like the basic belief. And that it should be the main religion of Japan. Others say that Shinto comes from Buddhism. And so it's basically kind of what Buddhists believe, just without the sacred texts. Like you still want to connect to someone spiritually. You still want to feel enlightened. It's not exactly the same, but like Buddha is a kami. That's what they believe. And so a lot of the connections are very similar, but Shinto kind of remove themselves, and same with Buddhism. They don't really like consider themselves to be related, basically. Buddhism has been flourishing in China for it had been flourishing in China for 500 years before finally getting to Japan. So it started in India, but then it went to China first. And Korea actually brought it to Japan. They promised the emperor in 532 CE that if he got everyone to practice Buddhism, they would have good luck forever. And that's kind of what started Buddhism in Japan. Many clans thought adopting Buddhism would cause disaster. Others were all for it. And because of that, there is still a division. And so they don't make everyone follow Buddhism. There's still half and half. And so that's where that big percentage of Shintoism comes from, because a lot of them follow that instead. The rulers established laws to add on to Buddhism once it became bigger. And we have the Shinbutsu Shugu, which is combining Kami and Buddha. So this is kind of those who believe in both. And that you can connect to Buddha, but that's not the only Kami. So you can kind of be for both of them. And Shinto and Buddhism, they didn't always get along, and they never actually became one. Most people who are Buddhists today, they actually follow more than one religion. So if you consider yourself Buddhist, a lot of times you follow another religion. And that's just because, there's a lot of things that make sense with Buddhism and believing that, but maybe they also believe there's other gods and there's something else. And so it's totally normal to have kind of that double belief system, which I think is good. I'm totally for being open-minded.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one thing that is the answer.
No.
There's no way.
No.
And so commies were known to deal with suffering and overcome it like Buddha. So there is that correlation. Commies did have to suffer, and then eventually they became spiritual. And so Buddhism, just to sum it up, is basically like a tree. It started in India. Those are the roots. Fell into China. Those are the branches. And then Japan are the flowers and the leaves that come upon it. So Japan has really allowed Buddhism to become more of a beautiful practice and kind of more spiritual. So it's just kind of cool to see how it spread so much over time.
Yeah.
But that's just scratching the surface on Shintoism and Buddhism. Yeah.
Highly recommend just looking further into it. You guys, just to understand more.
Yeah, any religion, you could study it forever, but it's just so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Man, these dogs.
It's freaking Remy.
We might have to give them attention before our next episode.
Yeah, he's such a baby.
Oh.
No, that was a good episode. Yeah, I never really knew much about those, because... Mm-hmm. I didn't take a religion class.
They forced me because I went to a, what is it called?
Private.
Yeah, I went to a private, not arts, liberal arts.
Okay.
So they made you take a philosophy class, you had to take a psychology class, and you had to take religion.
Okay. Honestly, I think... those are pretty important,
yeah.
too. I would say if you don't take psychology, take sociology.
Yeah.
One of those two, because it really opens your mind. And then taking, a religion that's not yours.
Yeah.
It helps you better understand, because my mom did that in college, and she went to... she did Judaism. Yeah. And so she went to one of the temples or whatever.
That's so cool. I'm so interested in it. I don't know if I 'cause I have so many interests. I was I should be a religions minor or something, but I'm not that into it, but I do just kind of having those conversations with people. I grew up Christian, and so taking this class was really eye-opening to me, because it was I feel I've just been living in this bubble, and there's so many other opinions that I want to learn more about.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to have that open mind and not just be that's crazy. How dare they think that? Because that's where we become very we're right, nobody else is right. And and it's just that's a step to growing, taking those different beliefs and kind of considering them. And so it's good to kind of open up to different things. So
yeah.
There's your lesson of the day. Go take a religions class. Oh. What'd you learn?
I Well, I learned pretty much everything because I did not know any of that, but that was very interesting to know, like, how their reincarnation functions.
Like the wheel and all of that.
Yeah. But yeah, circle of life, homies.
Yeah, because that never made sense to me. Like, that was hard for me to grasp. I guess, like, where do they fall when they are born again? But it makes sense, like, following their karma.
I really thought that, like, oh, maybe you'll be like a caterpillar or something.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because literally in my next life, I just want to be a house cat. So I don't do anything.
I want to be like, oh man, a penguin.
African or Arctic?
Arctic.
What? Well, honestly, both chances of being eaten by a shark or
but then you just start a new life.
As a caterpillar.
That would suck. Can you imagine, like, you went through this spectacular life and then you're born as like a ladybug? It's just like, come on.
Smash!
Yeah, you die immediately. I always thought of that as a kid. I was always like, reincarnation makes sense. Like, because you just don't remember the last life.
So the world's shittiest people turn into moths. Ooh, I have come to that conclusion.
Yes. Oh, and rats.
Yes.
The best people turn into dogs.
I agree.
Man. Yeah, reincarnation has always made sense to me. I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like, if you were a shitty person, you should have a shitty life. So I've always totally, like, understood that part. But yeah, anyway, that's Buddhism. If you are Buddhist, please contact me. Like, just, like, send me a message about, like, what you believe in, like, your form of Buddhism. Let me know if I messed anything up, because I want to give factual information. And one of my best friends is Buddhist, so it was cool. Like, I talked to her a little bit about it too, and just kind of hearing, like, the perspective of what it's like to be in America. So if you have any experience or you are really into religions and you know a bunch of things, please tell me. Tell us on our email.
Yeah. Oh yeah, where can you find us?
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at Historia the Podcast, or you can email us at historiathepodcast@gmail.com.
Give us your ideas or topics, suggestions.
Yes, for sure. Or just tell us a story. That's fine too.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a candle with a huge flame?
Oh my God. We gotta go let these dogs out. They're being so annoying.
Yeah. We're gonna go outside and cool off a bit. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.